When I was editing the Civil War series in New York City, away from my home and away from my family, I had gone to New York so I could work with Paul Barnes, who was an editor I'd worked with once before on the history of the Statue of Liberty. And I wanted to work with Paul, and it meant going to New York. And the editing took over 2 years. And in the summer of 1988, we'd all go out to lunch every day together.
And I have this habit of reading the New York Times book review, kind of cover to cover, just looking for, I've always been interested in history, so I'm looking for different subjects. And I came across on the back of the magazine this review of a book called In Her Own Right by Elizabeth Griffith, The Life of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And I said to myself, I never heard of this woman. Who is she?
I'm a filmmaker, but I'm also pretty well versed in American history, and I had never heard of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And every day he had a new progress report on the reading of this book, and every day I got more outraged by the fact that I had never been taught this history, that this was clearly the most important woman in American history.
When we raised the money to do the American Lives films, I said to Ken, why don't we do one on Stanton? And he readily agreed because I had inundated him with anecdote about her for months and months. And he gave me permission to go ahead and start to do the initial research on it. And the more I read, the more I realized that Anthony was a major part of the story as well, that she was a political partner of Stanton's, and she was an amazing friend of Stanton's.
This is such an important story to tell. It's moving on one level. It's a story of a 50-year friendship that when they finally part is so sad. It's the anatomy of a political movement. It's how you get things done in America, which means it's not always clean and dirty. It's not always a happy story. And yet you know they're relentlessly trying to make things better.
I really hope that viewers will realize after seeing this film that here are two women who have been unjustly neglected in American history. And that these two women who produced, I think, the major social change in American history should not have been forgotten. Why they were written out of history is beyond me.
When she started her career, women had less rights than someone in an insane asylum. And when she died, we were on the verge of getting the vote for women and all the things that women couldn't do before: serve in the professions, go to college, to earn their own wages, inherit their own property, have some custody of their children and some rights in divorce proceedings. All those and hundreds of other things that we take for granted now, which were denied them, were the direct response of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and later her protege, Susan B. Anthony. It had to be done. We had to make a film, and we vowed to do it. I remember that Emily Dickinson has this wonderful line in which she refers to sunrises and sunsets as the far theatricals of day. And we have always had our eye out for these dramas. And so we, some people talk about the magic hour or these God-given gifts of these moments.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty nice.
I love this story. I'm very proud to be involved in it. I'm actually proud to be a man involved in it because in the beginning there was a sense of awkwardness. Here we were, two men, Paul and me, and two male cameraman, camera assistant, coming into the Susan B. Anthony house in Rochester, New York, where all the staff were women, and it was sort of this standoff. And then all of a sudden we just smiled and shrugged and we went to work.
That's too contrasting. Oh, that's wonderful. Sister Mary.
Well, one of the biggest difficulties we had in the film is with the image of Anthony. And if I had a real wish, it's to have uncovered a photograph where she smiled. And evidently she had a wonderful smile, and for some reason when she was photographed, she felt that she had to be photographed like a man, that she had to be serious and stern and not play to the camera and to present herself as an upright public figure. And you look at those photographs now and you get this terrible impression of who she was. And I think in reality that she was an extremely smart, open, intelligent, witty woman.
I think As in all of the films, the memories of the production come in a couple of different areas. One is the moment of discovery when you're shooting, and that might be driving through Seneca Falls early one morning, and it's not a big city, but it's a city, and crossing over a railroad grading, and I looked and I saw down this railroad cut these leaves dropping onto the tracks. And I slammed on the brakes, I backed up the van, I got out. We were supposed to be shooting archives that day, and I went out and I set the camera up, and I shot 2 shots, which made it into the film. From every second, every frame of those shots are in the film. And it's just one of those great accidents. You're on the way to shoot archives at the Seneca Falls Historical Society, and you end up getting a great live shot. So it's just being open to that. For which Stanton and Anthony had agitated just 2 years earlier. Our job in the editing room provides this second thing, that working with Sarah Hill, our editor, Paul and I would have these moments where suddenly would gel, would come together. That head would go together with that archive and that first-person voice by Stanton, and then maybe followed by Julie Harris reading the Anthony quote, and all of a sudden what was dead was alive. And that's what you remember, every one of those times.
Like most people, I'd heard about Susan B. Anthony, but I didn't know anything about Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and she's a fascinating character. And just the relationship that they had and what they gave to each other and then brought to the movement is incredible. It's an important story, and I'm glad that people are going to know it.
The best part of making the films the way we do is that we have been able to sort of home grow a lot of people who've come in and worked, come in as interns and left as full editors, and have now gone on to do their own work. That is hugely satisfying. And Paul Barnes, who's been working with me as long as anyone, knows the satisfaction, because it's often been in the editing arena where he has been the true teacher and mentor to dozens of kids who are now often on their own and not kids.
It's great, actually, because he's the best teacher. And it's great having him produce it because he knows all the facts now. So now, instead of him being the one that wants to cut everything down, he knows everything. He knows all the stories. So he's the one making everything longer, which is very fun.
This is the first film that I've worked on as a producer. Ken was generous enough and had enough faith in me after working as an editor for him for almost 10 years. And knowing my passion for this subject, to allow me to, co-produce this film with him. And it was a really exhilarating and exciting experience to, having been a film editor for nearly 25 years, to finally get out into the field on the other side of the camera and try to make things happen from that end.
What's been really great about the Stanton Anthony is that this has been born out of true inspiration and collaboration, and Paul's been as great a partner and a full partner. I mean, this is in every sense a film by Ken and Paul.
I had never worked with a film director that I was so simpatico with. We just had this amazing symbiotic working relationship, which has continued for all these years.